You cannot kill a god who breathes through a million mouths. Strike one down, and the cloud only thickens. I am the itch in the wound, the drone in the dark, and the final gluttonous silence. Anonymous. Hello and welcome one and all to episode 9 of ExiledGottomas, a channel devoted to all things Path of Exile 2 related. I am Gottomas, your forever DM and fellow exile. In today's episode, we will be taking an in-depth dive into the evolution and completion of Beelzebub, as well as discussing the topic of failing at parts of this game and using those failures to learn new information so that going forward, you will not only be able to solve the problems and not repeat the same mistakes, but you might even be able to turn the mistake into a boon. So sit back and relax, smoke yourself a little smoke, and drink yourself a little drink while I expound upon the failure turned triumph of Beelzebub's build and how he became complete, albeit not perfect. So to start with, today we need to first take a look at where Beelzebub was when we last left off. Up until recently, he had been on a Lich base, but when I decided that I needed to switch things around for the completion of the character Legion, it remained untouched, and until it was time for Beelzebub's own build, I had not even really looked at it at all yet. So, now that I had decided that he was the next character I was going to finish, I wanted to try to make the Shaman as a base class work, now that I had used Lich for Legion. I respec'd my gear several times over, and I did the same for all of my passive skill tree, but to be honest, I was not getting anywhere. I'd earn a little bit of XP and then die and lose it. And in fact, I was perpetually caught in a cycle of going nowhere overall. And this is where the moment of failure that I was previously alluding to occurred. You see, I had desperately wanted to use the Staff of the Unborn Lich and to have an undead companion. But despite the fact of catching probably 30 undead to try and make it work, none of them actually had a great set of modifiers. And I was struggling to clear the current level content that I was on. I cannot tell you how many trials and experiments I went through before the repeated failures indicated something to me. I could be bad at building, but that seemed far-fetched considering my experiences in recent character completions. I could be very unlucky and simply not get the mobs to drop with the mods that I was looking for. But if that was the case, there's nothing I could do about that. Hell, to be honest, it could be the fact that I didn't have thousands of divines to be able to simply buy all of the gear that would be needed to break through my bottleneck with sheer force. I actually began to get so frustrated with the character that I thought about changing up classes again, or even just re-rolling to a brand new character entirely to see if a new build path would present itself to me. So, I took a few days break and just let all of the problems that I was facing with the build roll around in my mind. I didn't even turn on my PC. During that time frame, however, after giving myself a few days of rest and brainstorming during that time, I came to a realization. I was trying to do something, not just something, many things, where none of my choices were optimized. Maybe I could get away with a couple of non-optimized choices, but I simply could not make do with all of those being worked with at the same time. So after analyzing all of the confines and rules I had set up for myself, I came upon a big realization. I was not going to be successful in using bugs, really at all, if I allowed myself to only use the Staff of the Unborn Lich. If I want to use that staff, I really need it to be the focus of the build, and not try to have it, functioning while taking up space, when I'm actually really wanting the character to be more insect-based. So, I traded it out for a scepter and a wand. And I had already previously farmed those. They just had not sold yet in the market. And so with basically now minimal currency investments into the total reroll respec kind of idea, I was ready to try again. And this time, I started to slowly make progress. Again. All the while, tinkering and making sure I had optimized my skill tree to the best of my abilities. Then, right as I was starting to get frustrated again, because I wasn't making as much headway as I hoped, the math seemed to click for the build, and suddenly I was able to clear fully juiced T15s and T16s. After I started being able to farm those reliably, and I'd hit level 90, I knew that I'd finally had a new build that I could share with the community. But if I had given up or rage quit upon my initial failures, this would have never come to light. I would have just put out something else, or scrapped it as a complete failure and not come back to it. One more thing actually to realize as well about the lesson learned of adapting the build to my needs is that if we as a community of theory crafters can make something like this work and make it be viable in this level of early access that the game is currently in, simply imagine what we will all be able to make happen a few years' time from now. The game will be in a completely different state. There will be probably nearly infinite more possibilities for things that can occur. It's simply going to be mind-boggling. So, once again, despite the amazing level of frustration that I had allowed myself to feel, here I was again in simple awe of how good the game already is. I guess that means, truthfully, it's probably about time to take a deep dive into the build and see how it works. Alright guys, so let's get this party started and we'll start going over the actual build out of this character. So today I think we're going to work with, first we're going to start with the gear, the finalized gear. Though there are a lot of areas I will tell you could be better off and better represented here. This gear is nowhere near like maximally optimized, but it is fulfilling its purpose so far. So, starting with the helmet, mainly here was just getting the biggest energy shield I could find to make up for the lack of survivability that I was experiencing recently. Like I said, it's not great with that 15% increased light radius, but it's not terrible. And the energy shield alone is pretty much worth carrying. Our amulet. This one was very important and actually did cost a little bit of money. It's one of the very few things I actually bought for this character. When I got it, it had the 50 spirit, the 3 to all minion level skills, and the 22% increased cast speed. I re-rolled a couple of things, added to it, got the desecration, 6% increased spell damage, and I did the empowering remains allocation of modifier. Then the unset rings. I've told y'all before that unset rings are your best friend when you're playing a minion build because of that extra skill slot. These two in particular I chose mainly for between their chaos resistance and their chaos damage. They're the majority, actually the vast majority of my chaos resistance on my kit is through just simply these two rings. Next up is the part that's probably the most non-optimized, or the least optimized, whatever you want to turn the phrase to be. When I got this, I literally, it had the spirit, and it had the increased spirit reservation efficiency, and I basically have not touched it, to be honest with you. I bought it just to try and make it through the T15s. It served its purpose, but I would infinitely prefer just a really high energy shield or like an armor energy shield combo with this build. Next up, the gloves. So the gloves is where one of our primary sinks for elemental resistance is. We got fire, cold, and lightning all in good numbers there. Other than that, they're pretty self-explanatory. I mean, there's nothing there that's very surprising. Same thing here, fire, cold, lightning. The big thing here was also getting the highest level of energy shield that I could, but then equipping the Aminamu's gaze, I think is which one it is. That's our movement skill ability. And man, oh man, does it make a big difference when you're sitting at over 400 spirit. So it's astonishing. I do still have the Staff of the Unborn Lich, and I am still using the His Grave command to try and eventually find a undead companion that fits with everything I'm going for with this character. And then the belt. Once again, another big sink for our fire, cold, and lightning. You'll see that I'm not using a headhunter. In fact, I haven't used a headhunter once in any of my builds. I actually like being able to have the fire, cold, lightning heavy level resistance on the belt. It does really great job for me, utilizing that slot to fulfill those elemental resistances. Then we've got the Ultimate Life Flask. Nothing fancy there. It's just the biggest number I could get with no detriment. And same thing there. Most mana I could get with no detriment. And then I am using the Shaman's thing that removes your charm slots so that you can gain an extra 40 spirit for each. So that's 120 spirit on top. So next up, let's get into, I guess, the skills. Power Siphon I do not use. It's a free thing on the wand. Malice I do use, and I have Upwilling and Clarity 2 in it, both of which are just fantastic passive support skills you can lock into a good buff. I have Feast of Flesh and His Grave Command, neither of which are supported, though I am tinkering with the idea that I believe there may be a gem combination in His Grave Command that I can do to make the summons, when I do it, the Undead Companion summon, to make it a higher level base than it already is. I'm still testing this. I need probably 600 more Divine to get it actually figured out. If I do, I'll let you guys know. No biggie. Unearth. Now, here is your primary mapping skill. It's astonishing how powerful Unearth is at this level. I think I can actually get 28 or 30 skeletons up of those little scorpion skeletons to fulfill our swarm need. They look like little insect skeletons running around, so it fits perfectly in with the thematics, and as long as the power level is good, we're set. So Unearth is definitely primary mapping skill. I'm using with the Armor Break, Smelting, which is fantastic if you have not tried it before, Brutality 3, Rapid Casting 2, and Minion Pack 2. The only one you may not know really is Smelting. When you fully break an enemy's armor with support skills, it causes the affected target's life bar, or not their life bar, it causes them to take increased physical damage. When everything is swinging with physical, as far as these little scorpion skeletons go, it stacks on a big amount of power for very little actually invested into it. Next up, Essence Drain and Contagion. Essence Drain, we ran with Shock, Projectile Acceleration, and I know you're asking me why I had Shock, but I did that because I have Eshe's Radiance. Chaos damage from hits with supported skills also contributes to Shock chance. Supported skills gain 40% of lightning damage as extra chaos damage. So between Shock and the Eshe's Radiance, I actually have a pretty good ability to Shock and keep Shock moving and up most of the time. Then lastly, just Intense Agony and Prolonged Duration. Both of those are, they make perfect sense. Contagion, we have the Unleash, Minion Pact, Intense Agony, Prolonged Duration, and Acrimony. Acrimony is situational. But if you've ever been on the receiving end of like a Strider of the Pit that regenerates life and you don't have acrimony, man, it's a big pain in the ass to deal with. So while it is situational, the situations it comes up in are so beneficial to warrant a straight up slot. Now, here was the big surprise. The Feathered Spider is actually one of the it's one of the more tanky specters in the game. If we go to advanced info, you can see it's got 33,000 life. That's higher than almost everything else in the game. But when you have it running with the amount that I do of efficiency of reservation of skills, you can get it down to 67. So for roughly the same cost as one elephant tortoise, I can get 2 feathered spiders and have possibly even more health than the elephant tortoise did. This is amazing because I'm rocking Infernal Legion 3, Gottomas, Minion Mastery, Tech Rods, and Magnified Area. Having 2 of these things at the same time seems like it might be overkill, except for the fact that these things are so aggressive that most of the time I've noticed that those 2 spiders are not anywhere near each other. So they may overlap a little bit with their area of effect, but they're so different in who they're attacking that for the most part it just fills the screen with their presence, allowing everything to take damage from Infernal Legion, and then take even more, like way more damage thanks to Rakiata's Flow. This was probably the biggest piece of math that I figured out in making the T15s, T16s viable. Then we've got a Gargantuan Wasp. Now, this one, you see, is maxed out quality-wise, but I didn't max out the sockets. And the reason I didn't max out the sockets is because by itself, Burning Ground Death is meh. Conjures Lightning Storms, though, is pretty badass. Proximal Tangibility is pretty badass. And Extra Crits is really badass. I figure this guy is strong enough that he doesn't need all those other levels of support like the others do. So instead of doing a 5 slot Perfect Jeweler's Orb on this, I left this be, and I equipped it with Diala's Desire to increase the level of supported skills plus the quality of supported skills, which if you do that to a companion skill makes it cheaper on the efficiency level. I also activated Uhtred's Omen, plus 3 of level support skills if exactly one other support is modifying them. So between the 2, we're getting plus 4 to the level of this skill. So plus 4 to our Gargantuan Wasp. And we're getting 10% extra efficient, or 10% extra quality, which gives us more efficiency. These 2 things right here, these 2 slots, were enormous to figure out as far as the math went. Next up, I've got the Black Bark Demolishers. Now, these guys do heavy fire damage, actually. But the main reason that they're there is because they are slightly slower than most of the other specters that I have. They function as a really good set of bodyguard units. And so I'm supporting them with Immolate, which is fantastic because the feathered spiders are already catching everything on fire. I don't need these guys to do more fire to ignite. I need these guys to just do more fire. So we got 30% of damage as extra fire damage against that. We've got Fire Penetration 2, which removes any issue. And the reason that we actually we're supporting the fire so much is because they already do fire damage. I didn't even have to equip fire to them. This is just something that they naturally, inherently do. So it makes perfect sense when you're looking at how we're supporting them. Feeding Frenzy 2, I don't care if these guys survive that long, but they are actually pretty tanky, so it makes it work actually fairly nicely. Execute 3 is self-explanatory. I mean, there's just really not... there's really not anything that I would say it has to deal with that. I don't know a better way to put what I'm trying to say. I mean, execute is self-explanatory. That's it. It just does more damage as you get lower in life. There. Eternal Flame 3 is really interesting because these guys swing fairly rapidly. They've got a decent enough crit chance, but it refreshes the ignite. So if they are ignited from the Fettered Spiders, they will gain a refreshed ignite duration thanks to these Black Bark Demolishers. Overall, actually, for this patch, these guys are definitely one of my favorite selections in the game. Now, the surprise. Experimental primates. I tested Ravenous Swarm, Bloodletting Swarm, the third one, there's another swarm insect. I tested all of the, like it that crawls and rasps scavengers and the nettle ants. I tested everything below like 40 spirit or less. None of them actually seemed to make much of an impact, especially the swarming flying bugs and the crag leapers. Those things did nothing to help. The experimental primate, though, especially with that weapon that it has, it's got a breath weapon, is actually pretty substantial for its spirit cost. It does good damage. It's got decent life. But the craziest thing is based on everything I can tell, even if you kill it, if it's breathing that fire almost acts like a hazard. It stays burning for a few seconds. So things that walk through it will still take damage. But because they are such low in spirit, then we have the Omninomous Tithe to get those abyssal modifiers rolling for us. That's very, very important. Minion instability, again, because they are low on life and we actually kind of want them to die. Rapid attacks to try and get the breath weapon to happen more often and just them go faster. Immolate makes sense because we've already discussed it. And fire penetration too. Nothing wonky there except for the Omninomous Tithe. Next up, Despair. So, if you're going to use ED Contagion, Despair is a huge benefit. However, Deirdre's Undoing makes this a lot better, actually. I was very impressed with how Deirdre's functions in-game. The dark design is really cool. Callisto's Crescendo is another one. Just making enemies pacified for 30% of the curse's duration is amazingly strong, especially on like a boss or something. Rearm 2, that's because we already made the Despair Sigil something on the ground. So this has because it creates a hazard since it's on the ground, this gives you a chance for it to rearm after it's been triggered, which is actually pretty nice. Focus and Focus Curse and Impending Doom, both of which they're pretty self-explanatory. Last up, we have Dark Effigy. Again, if you're going to run Contagion, Essence Strain, Dark Effigy is amazing. But then we have Tawa's Tending, which is great. It has another Vengeance built into it, which is a phenomenal key feature for free, basically. We have Splinter Totem, because the number of shots that can actually start pouring out of a fully done Splinter Totem is actually fairly absurd. Projectile Acceleration 3, so it fires faster and it fires further away. Font of Blood gives us a little bit of healing to us and our allies when we summon a totem. And Urgent Totems just make everything faster in general. So Pain Beast and Bind Spectre are just there. They're just extras. I've got them in the keybinds, but that's just because I always am looking. I mean, here, in fact, you can literally see right here. Here's a new undead that I just caught. With Shroud Walker, periodic cold explosions, fire resistant, regenerates life. Like, you'll see. And in fact, if y'all want to see it a for real thing, that's all the specters that I've caught so far this league. Companions are the ones here in the middle and the ones at the bottom. Bottom right, this is all stuff that I've tested and I was not happy with how it worked. These are specters that I've tested that work, but they're not necessarily my favorite thing in a lot of situations. These are specters that they really need more testing out, so to speak. These are all specters that I know for sure work and are amazing. Here's all the undeads that I have found, and they're just kind of lumped in together. Though this is a new set that I've started collecting down here. These will be for ones I actually think have potential to carry. These are just kind of unsorted while I'm still trying to figure out where to put them. And lastly, the bottom left, these are newer ones that I haven't completed testing on, but they have been tested a little bit. So, last up, let's get over to the passives. Okay, so here I wanted some mana regen. That was very, very important because I use mana like it's going out of style. You can see we started going just straight out towards the edge. Want to make sure that we got a good jewel for this section, and the reason being is because I didn't take anything worthy of having one of the big nodes within this range do blah. I tried it, it wasn't giving me that much good, so I switched over to the plus level of all essence drain skills and have been happy with that ever since. Down here you're mainly wanting this one, 15 strength. It's just a dynamite strength additive, and we are very multiple efficient attribute deficient in this build. We need really all three to be well, and we still need not to use Astramentis to gain all the extra stats. We need our amulet slot to be able to figure out what we like to slot in specifically, not just stat lines. This one, however, looks very similar, except this gives you the commanding rage, which is enormously powerful when you're running with a shaman. In fact, let's go ahead and drop over to the Ascension so you can see that. Mana and life recovery, no big deal. There's our 40 spirit for each empty charm slot. Then we went maximum rage right there, and every rage grants 1% more spell damage, maximum rage, and then Furious Wellspring, which is the biggest point of this. To round out everything else, we went down here and at least got the base level of adaptation. May end up switching out adaptation for the completed version of it instead of the extra spirit, but right now currently I actually really like the extra spirit, so we'll see. Coming back out toward the side, these we just drop down for more attributes and to be able to get closer to a few nodes over here if we end up needing some places to put some stuff. But originally we did actually come back out this way and we wanted to hit these nodes, and the main reason being is right there. It's that 10 strength. Any node you find that's better than a +5, it gives whatever, and then a good modifier to attributes is very powerful in my opinion. But I probably could realistically, if I figured out where to put strength, I could probably put these 4 points somewhere else. Coming up next, these are very interesting. These are some rage nodes that we really need to get, but we came up here specifically for that. Every rage also grants 2% increased spell damage, which is phenomenal for ED Contagion. And then on this side, companions deal more damage, more damage, more damage, and more damage. But this one in particular is really interesting because it's just minion in your presence, not different minion, just each minion. So this works better than Muster ever could. Especially when you got like 2 fettered spiders, 5 experimental primates, 1 gargantuan wasp. You got all these, especially when you really get going into the unearthed and you got 30 unearthed creatures. Like, you can hit that maximum of 80% pretty easily, pretty fast. So then we worked our way over. For those of you who don't know, these sets right here, that's a huge bonus to any of the unearthed skeletons right there. The skeletons, zombies, all those 2 things, even the skittering skittering golems that you can get from the gym, the support skill gym for fishers, it would benefit from these right here. These are very, very impressive nodes for temporary minions. Then, over here, cranked it back out, got our next jewel socket. This one's just a really nice jewel. Again, I didn't have anything to put into the big radius, so there was no point in it. So we dropped down, and this is where we got to the big one here. We gain a lot of extra healing, but minions gain 15% extra life. And when you're running Infernal Legion on the Fettered Spiders, having extra life is enormous. We've talked about this before. Any and all Spectre minion builds completely need these nodes. Same thing with these nodes here. And main reason being is because you get that one, the 12% increased efficiency. Invaluable for any sort of minion stuff. If you're going Infernal Legion, again, 12%, 12%, 12%. These are huge numbers that we can add on to our minions' health pool. Then we came back over here, started doing energy recharge. We fought our way up to gain some more minion increased life. Here we went towards the gigantic following so that everything was giant. That gives increased life. Over here, this is just our chaos node to give us a little bit extra help of our ED contagion stuff, but mainly to give our minions even more maximum life. But having that extra chaos resistance is a really good thing because minions are very susceptible to that, typically speaking. Then we came across, we dropped down once again just for some stats, and here we got 10% increased damage and 25% increased life. Look at there, once again going for max life. We came across here, we needed a big intelligence sink to make sure we could afford everything we needed, so that's why these three are selected. Then dropped down to here. This was the only one that I actually have stuff that I could fit in. Right now it's the best I've got. I'm probably going to end up changing it out, but it's okay. There's nothing actually wrong with it. It's just it's not exactly what I need. Then we came here. Biggest thing here is besides the breaking of armor, it's that extra strength score, that 10 to strength. It's much, much better than a normal attribute score to have double it. So then lastly we dropped down, started here and then worked damage, 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 life, life, revive, revive. These are all things that are beneficial when you are really working your butt off trying to get Infernal Legion to work. So with that, I think that's actually all of the build out idea and the main premise of why we ran with the build out idea. So I guess it's time we can start wrapping things up. Well, there you have it, guys. I must say that I never would have thought that this video would take me this long to figure out, and I'm very sorry for the delays, but truthfully, this build out is one of the hardest theory crafts that I have ever made work, and I'm honestly thrilled with the result. I do think this build has a lot of room still to grow if you are willing to spend a bunch of divs on it, or if you're a master craftsman. But if you're working on a budget with this build, then I would certainly suggest building something else that was inherently really strong so that it could provide funding and gear for this build in the future. Also, a really good thing to take away from this build is that while you may end up having to hard focus the specifics of a theory craft to make the end result viable, you shouldn't give up on what you want to do simply because it's proving difficult to make work or seems outside of your budget to finish. Another thing to really keep in your mind as you are designing your build ideas is that you can always redo your passive skill tree allocations over and over and over again, because a lot of times those nodes, with a simple redistributing of one node here to one node there and vice versa, they can place a huge emphasis on whatever core concept you're trying to accomplish. So, thank you once again for joining me today on my latest episode, exploring and designing my latest character concept. Join me next time as we will revisit and finish off Ursa Colossus, the Jade Bear. Once again, I am Gottomas, your neighborhood forever DM, and fellow exile, wishing you nothing but the best in all of your own theory crafting, farming, and adventures in Rayclast. Oh, P.S. One final thought. Our Discord for the Wind Talkers Guild is entering its final design stages, and so we will begin actively recruiting within the next week or two. So if you'd like to join up and maybe be a part of a guild unlike hopefully any that you've ever been a part of before, or even help join the leadership and help design said guild, please don't hesitate to send me a message or to look me up in the game. Thank you one and all. I hope that you have a wonderful, safe, and relaxing day.